The thing that emerged from the Persephone's cargo hold was beyond anything Cole had imagined. It stood 40 feet tall, a massive creature of ice and darkness, its body composed of thousands of frozen fragments pressed together. Within those fragments, Cole could see faces. Not just the crews from the ships, but others. Ancient faces. People who had been frozen centuries ago, absorbed into this thing's body, becoming part of its terrible mass. The military bombardment had begun at dawn. Jets screamed overhead, dropping incendiary bombs. Helicopters circled, firing missiles. Tanks lined the perimeter, their guns blazing. The harbor became a war zone. Fire and ice colliding in an apocalyptic battle that lit up the sky. But with every attack, the creature grew stronger. It pulled moisture from the air, from the ocean, freezing it instantly and adding it to its body. It absorbed the cold from the water around it, drawing power from the Atlantic itself. Fire could wound it, but it couldn't kill it. Because this thing wasn't just made of ice. It was ice. It was the cold itself. Given form and purpose, Cole watched from the military command center, 2 miles from the harbor. General Patricia Ross stood beside him, her face grim as she watched the battle unfold on the monitors. "We're losing," she said quietly. "Every minute it gets bigger, stronger. At this rate, it'll reach Boston by midnight, New York by tomorrow morning." Cole looked at the screens showing thermal imaging of the creature. At its center, deep within the mass of ice, was a core. A dark spot that pulsed with unnatural energy. That was the source, the heart of the thing. Destroy that, and maybe, just maybe, they could end this. "I need to get inside it," Cole said. Ross turned to him. "That's suicide. You'd freeze before you got within 10 feet. Then I'll need protection. The best thermal suit you have. Portable heaters. And enough explosives to blow that core apart." Ross studied him for a long moment. "You really think you can do this?" Cole thought about Morrison, about his crew, about the 12,000 people who had been frozen in Belmore and the surrounding towns, about the millions more who would die if this thing wasn't stopped. "I have to try," he said. 30 minutes later, Cole was geared up. A military-grade thermal suit that could withstand temperatures down to -200 degrees. Portable heating units strapped to his back, and enough C4 explosives to level a building, packed into a waterproof pack. Webb, his leg still bandaged from the earlier encounter, clasped his shoulder. "You get one shot at this. Make it count," Cole nodded. "If I don't make it back, burn everything. The ships, the harbor, everything. Don't let it spread." A military helicopter took him as close as they dared. The pilot fought against winds that had turned into a blizzard, the creature's presence warping the weather itself. They dropped Cole half a mile from the harbor, the closest they could get without the helicopter's systems freezing. Cole hit the ground running. The thermal suit kept him alive, but he could feel the cold trying to get in, probing for weaknesses. The temperature here was -50 and dropping. His breath came out in clouds so thick he could barely see. The harbor was unrecognizable. The entire area had transformed into a landscape of ice. Buildings were encased in crystalline shells. Streets had become frozen rivers. And at the center of it all stood the creature, its body pulsing with dark energy. Cole moved through the frozen wasteland, dodging ice formations that looked like grasping hands. Around him, he could see the frozen people, trapped in the ice, still alive, still aware. Their eyes followed him as he passed, pleading silently for help he couldn't give. The Persephone loomed ahead. The creature was using it as an anchor, its massive body connected to the ship by tendrils of ice. Cole could see the cargo hold, the doors still open, darkness visible within. That's where he needed to go. Back to where it all started. He climbed over frozen debris, his thermal suit's heating units working at maximum capacity. The closer he got to the creature, the colder it became. -70, -90. His suit's alarm was screaming warnings, telling him he had minutes before the systems failed. Cole reached the Persephone's hull and found the ladder he'd climbed weeks ago when this nightmare began. It was coated in ice, but still climbable. He pulled himself up, one rung at a time, fighting against wind that tried to push him back. The deck was worse. Ice covered everything in thick layers. The creature's tendrils pulsed around him like massive arteries carrying frozen blood. Cole moved carefully, knowing that one touch from those tendrils would freeze him solid. The cargo hold entrance was ahead, dark, waiting. Cole pulled out a flare, lit it, and descended into the darkness. The cargo hold was a nightmare made real. The walls were covered in ice, so thick they looked like they were made of frozen glass. And in the center, connected to the creature above by a massive column of ice, was the core. It looked like a giant heart made of black ice, pulsing, beating. With each pulse, Cole could feel the temperature drop, This was it, the source of everything. The thing that had been sleeping in the deep for thousands of years, waiting to be awakened. Cole pulled out the C4, his hands shaking from the cold. He had to move fast. His suit was failing. Ice was forming on the inside of his visor. His fingers were going numb. He placed the explosives around the core, working with desperate speed. The core seemed to sense what he was doing. The temperature dropped even further. Cole's suit alarms went critical. -120 degrees. He couldn't feel his hands anymore. Could barely see through the frost covering his visor. But he kept working, placing the last charge, setting the timer. 30 seconds. Cole tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. Ice had formed on the suit's joints, locking them in place. He looked down and saw frost spreading across his body, the cold finally breaking through the suit's defenses. 20 seconds. He fell, hitting the frozen deck. Above him, through the cargo hold entrance, he could see the sky. Could see the creature's massive form towering over everything. 10 seconds. Cole closed his eyes. Thought about Morrison. About the choices that led them here. About the cargo hold that should never have been opened. 5 seconds, he felt the cold entering his lungs. Felt ice forming in his blood. Felt his heart slowing, struggling against the impossible temperature, 0. The explosion tore through the cargo hold with the force of a small sun. The C4 detonated all at once, creating a ball of heat and pressure that vaporized everything around the core. The black ice heart shattered, its fragments blown apart by the blast. Above, the creature screamed. Not with a voice, but with a sound that shook the earth. Its connection to the core severed, its body began to collapse. The ice that composed it started to crack, to fall apart, to melt. The frozen people throughout Belmore and the surrounding towns suddenly gasped, air filling their lungs for the first time in days. The ice that held them began to crack. Some would survive. Many wouldn't, but they were free. The temperature began to rise. Slowly at first, then faster. The unnatural cold that had gripped the coast started to fade. Pushed back by normal weather patterns, in the cargo hold of the Persephone, Cole lay still. Ice covered his body. His suit's systems were dead. The heating units had failed, but his eyes were open, and he was smiling, because he'd done it. He'd stopped the cold, saved the world. Even if it cost him everything. General Ross's team found him 3 hours later, when the ice had melted enough to allow access to the harbor. They pulled him from the cargo hold, his body frozen, his heart stopped. But Webb, who had insisted on coming with the rescue team, refused to give up. He and the medics worked for an hour, slowly warming Cole's body, fighting to restart his heart, and impossibly, miraculously, it worked. Cole's eyes fluttered open. He gasped, drawing in a breath that felt like fire in his frozen lungs. "Easy," Webb said, tears streaming down his face. "You're okay. You did it. It's over." Cole looked past Webb at the sky. The sun was shining. The temperature was 45 degrees. Normal for June on the Massachusetts coast. The cold was gone. 3 weeks later, Cole stood at the harbor. The frozen ships had been towed out to sea and sunk in deep water, where they could never threaten anyone again. The town of Belmore was being rebuilt. Of the 12,000 people who had been frozen, 8,000 had survived. Not everyone made it, but it was more than anyone had hoped for. Morrison's crew had been among the survivors. Cole had visited them in the hospital, told them about their captain's final moments. How he'd fought the cold even when there was no hope. How his sacrifice had given Cole the knowledge he needed to stop the creature. Cole looked out at the ocean. The Atlantic stretched to the horizon, calm and peaceful. But Cole knew the truth. The deep held secrets, ancient things that slept in the darkness, waiting to be awakened. The cargo hold of the Persephone had contained something that should have stayed buried, something from a time before recorded history, something that humans were never meant to find. But they had found it, and they'd paid the price. Cole turned away from the water. He was done with the ocean, done with ships, done with the cold. As he walked away, he didn't see the small patch of frost forming on the dock behind him. Didn't see it spread, just an inch or two, before stopping. Didn't see the single black eye that opened in the ice. Watched him leave, then closed again, waiting, because the cold was patient, and the cold always returned.